Hey gang, it's Squill, and this week we have probably the most exciting episode of Fiona and Cake Season 2. The Bird and the Clock is the 6th episode of Fiona and Cake's second season. The bird in the title to this one obviously refers to the cosmic owl, who Fiona and Huntress stuff inside a clock at the end of the episode. This episode begins with a brief origin story for the Cosmic Owl and his brother, who we later find out to be the Karmic Worm, as the two are both punished for eating the ethereal pizza by becoming cosmic entities. Interesting to see that Orbo was the one who forced these two brothers into their positions. He seemed like a pretty chill guy when we last saw him back in Jerry, but perhaps there is a darker side to Orbo. Also interesting to see what appear to be two of the Citadel guards. I wonder what they're doing here. After the cold open, we see Fiona and the gang gather around the cemetery. I agree with Gary that there's some really cool ambiance here. It's here that Fiona reveals that she's teamed up with Hannah as they plan to use the mausoleum to host a fundraiser, which is pretty messed up. Of course, it's not like Fiona knows the full extent of Marshall's relationship with his mom, but she still knows that he's not on good terms with her, which makes this a pretty underhanded thing to do, especially since she claims to be doing it for him and Gary. Hannah's appearance here does make for some pretty funny interactions though. Like, I love her already having this tombstone picked out for Marshall. And her having a completely androgynous one for Gary is even funnier. Fun fact, this is actually based off an old Steve Wolfhard drawing of King of Ooh on a date. Here, Cake tells Fiona about what she saw last episode with her working with Hannah. A good reminder of the dark path Fiona is going down. Outside the mausoleum, we get our first interaction between Hunter and Huntress Wizard. But before that, I actually really like this moment of Hunter preparing to talk to Fiona about her flaking on the meeting with the Parks Department. Really makes me wish we got another scene between Fiona and Hunter this season. Hopefully next season will remedy this, with Hunter seemingly joining Fiona, Cake, and Fennel on their adventure, but I really was hoping for more from them this season. I do really love their brief scene with Huntress Wizard in this episode though. It's really fun how they just don't get along at all. It's interesting characterization that Huntress Wizard views Hunter as just a soft version of herself. Hunter is a version of Huntress Wizard who is more open and vulnerable about the way they feel. The exact type of person that Huntress expressed fear of becoming back in Flute Spell. Back in Ooh, the gang are still looking for ways to save Finn. I love randomly bringing back Old Lady Princess of all characters in her first ever speaking role since Season 1's When Wedding Bells Thaw. The gag where she's horrified by being turned young again is very funny. This episode is the last in our 3-episode streak of the Ooh gang making failed attempts to save Finn, in which Marcy tries making him immortal by biting him. Of the 3, I think this one does work best for me, as it's at least not something that was a big cliffhanger at the end of last episode. And there are some things I like here, such as the Vampire King's appearance. I always thought it was a little weird how they didn't do anything with him being in Marcy's head after Stakes. I wonder if they'll do anything else with him in Season 3. Marcy sucking on BB's hair is also a cute reference to Red Starved. But this is still my least favorite part of the episode, as it just doesn't add anything to the season overall. You could take these scenes out and nothing would change. This is followed, however, by a scene I really love of Huntress dreaming about Finn. We'll see more of this later on in the episode, but there's something really ballsy about the show portraying an adult Finn as someone very reckless and emotionally stunted. I've talked about this before, but I think after Jake's death, Finn got a little careless with his own life. More willing to throw himself into dangerous situations now that Jake isn't around. I also really like that Huntress clearly resents Finn for acting this way. Partially because it's Finn's fault she's even here to begin with, but also because Huntress herself has been acting very recklessly in her attempts to save Finn. It is a little strange, however, that Huntress's resentment towards Finn doesn't really come up again after this, which is a bit of a shame. I wish the season explored that more. Also fun to use Finn's old man design from Together again. This is when the Cosmic Owl shows up, with the intent to give Finn a croak dream. I really like the concept of this episode, a character trying to prevent a croak dream from happening. It's kind of a nice parallel to The New Frontier, the first episode to ever feature a croak dream, where instead of a character trying to prevent a croak dream from becoming real, a character is trying to prevent a croak dream from even being made in the first place. Huntress follows the cosmic owl into Fiona's dream. I love getting to hear the instrumentals to Winter King's song before Fiona interrupts it. The naked chicken thing and all the dead candy people are all very clear signs that Fiona is still feeling guilt over acting recklessly in Winter King world. And this dream taking place in the mausoleum shows that she is afraid of acting this way again. Fiona dragging herself into the water is a pretty clear metaphor for her self-sabotage. But I really like the detail that the Fiona we see in her reflection is wearing her adventurer outfit. What's dragging Fiona down is her desire to be seen as a hero. And it's pretty telling that this is the outfit we see Fiona in for the entire rest of the dream. We then jump inside Cake's dream where she has just given birth. It's cool getting to see the gender swap designs of the pups. Although this moment is played off comedically, there is something very sad about Cake being horrified that her kittens are like her. I also really like Miss Cupcake comforting Encrom with the exact same line that Mr. Cupcake gave to Lady in Jake's mind back in Time Sandwich. Then in Ellis's dream, we get some foreshadowing for next episode. Then in Marshall's dream, we get more angst between him and Simone. Then we jump inside Felix's dream, in which he is winning over Fiona from Hunter. When I first watched this episode, I actually thought this was supposed to be Hunter's dream, representing their jealousy over Felix. It still could be, I suppose, but that's never really confirmed by the end of the season, so I assume it is just Felix's. Our trio is woken up after this, and Huntress decides to go inside Fiona's mind to reach Finn. I love how freaky the imagery is of Huntress's tendrils going inside Fiona's mind. Instead of meeting our Finn, however, Fiona and Huntress encounter Farmworld Finn, who's confirmed to still be alive after taking a blow to the head back in Destiny. And thank God Fiona tells him about Jay and Little Destiny. The fact that Jay abandoned his entire family just to live in Fiona world was easily my least favorite aspect of Season 1 of Fiona and Cake. But Farmworld Finn knowing that Jay is in Fiona world and that he's safe makes that so much easier to swallow. I do wonder if the show will have Farmworld Finn reunite with Jay at some point. I feel like this probably isn't the last we'll see of him, but we'll see. After Huntress tells Fiona that this is the wrong Finn, the two go inside Farmworld Finn's mind to meet the right Finn. Farmworld Finn knowing our Finn is an obvious reference to the events of Crossover, and I like that he seems to owe Finn a debt of gratitude for saving him all the way back in that episode. I love how empty and hollow Finn's mindscape is, compared to his much warmer and more welcoming Farmworld self. Solely consisting of a poster with a neutral expression that totally won't be relevant later on in the season, and a TV displaying Finn on his adventures. This TV is a cool bit of meta symbolism, wherein which Finn is constantly living out reruns of his adventures without actually dealing with his problems. It reminds me a bit of the opening to Together Again, where Finn is similarly reliving his adventures with Jake in his head. Anyways, our trio enters the TV and pops out inside a theater. I don't think this is the same theater from Orb, they have completely different designs. However, the eye seen on top is very reminiscent of Nightmare Princess. Most of the obstacles that Finn is facing seem to be related to time in some way, which is a pretty obvious metaphor for the race against time before Finn's death. All except this kissy mouth enemy that's probably a reference to all the princesses smooching on him back in the Lion of Embers. Throughout this episode, we will see Finn be brutally killed dozens of times. And at the risk of sounding sadistic, it's kinda awesome. There's something very ballsy about dedicating half an episode to constantly killing off your previous main character, all done in very fun and creative ways. The worst of which being the way he's chopped up in this cuckoo clock, just so brutal. I also really like how Finn's first death reminds Fiona of Martin's back in the Star, and how she similarly feels like she failed Finn in this moment like she did Martin. But speaking of Fiona, this is our first time seeing her interact with Finn, something that fans have wanted to see ever since the first Fiona and Cake episode. And despite it all being within a dream, there is something very satisfying about seeing these two finally team up. Love hearing them both do the Finn scream, very funny. I also love that every time Finn dies and comes back, he says, "Who are you?" in that exact same intonation. It's low-key sort of become a vocal stim for me. It's very interesting that whenever Fiona tells Finn she's here to protect him, she calls her his girl Jake. On the one hand, it's very sweet that Finn views Jake as someone who was always there to protect him. But on the other hand, it's also very telling that now that Jake's gone, Finn throws himself into whatever adventure he can. It's almost like he views losing Jake as an excuse to be more reckless with himself. I also love Finn using Jake's sword here, which is funny because Jake himself barely ever used that sword, it only has 2 appearances. But it's a nice visual metaphor for Finn still holding on to a piece of Jake. And speaking of swords, Fiona uses her Wish Star sword here. The sword debuted in the Fiona and Cake comic, but later showed up in the actual show in The Prince Who Wanted Everything. Man, this episode is just filled with references. Another of which being the corpse of Jerry World BMO. Yet another reminder of someone who died on Fiona's previous adventure. But probably my favorite scene of the episode is Finn's hero heart speech he gives to Fiona. It's very wholesome seeing our previous protagonist inspire our new protagonist, even if she ends up taking it the wrong way. Fiona and Cake, as a show, has been very critical of Finn's behavior in his adult years, so I do like that they still show off Finn's heroic side. That no matter what he's going through, Finn is someone who perseveres, who keeps fighting. There is something very admirable about that, even if it leads him into dangerous situations. While this is going on, Huntress is busy facing off against a cosmic owl. There is something very fun about her being so bloodthirsty this episode. Huntress kills Cosmic Owl here, which ends up not being permanent. Which does make a lot of sense given how matter-of-factly his death is treated here. I do love Fiona's exasperated laughter here though. Girl is definitely traumatized after seeing an alternate version of herself die so many times. As if she isn't traumatized enough already. I really like this little moment between the 2 Finns, once again showing Farmworld Finn's gratitude for our Finn saving him from the crown. We get a nice moment between Finn and Huntress too, featuring one of Ashley Birch's best line deliveries all season. I really love her cold silence after Finn tells her he loves her. I love Fiona noticing and calling her out on this too. This puts an end to the dream stuff, but we still have a little bit of episode left, in which Fiona follows her hero heart to ask Felix to play at the fundraiser. We get another flash of Winterking here before Felix awkwardly walks off. We then end the episode off with a BMO cameo. Always nice to see the little guy. The gag of him drawing on Finn's face is just classic BMO. The Bird and the Clock is a fantastic episode, easily one of the best of the season. Words cannot describe how nice it is to just get an episode primarily focused on one storyline that isn't constantly jumping between subplots. And of all episodes to do this with, I am so glad they picked the Finn and Fiona team-up episode. Between this episode and their scene together in The Bear and the Rose, I am satisfied with the amount of screen time they get together this season. Also, just tons of fun dream imagery this episode. Felt very reminiscent of the dream episodes and sequences in the original show. Just an amazing episode overall. An instant classic, in my opinion. But with that, please let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments, and join me next time for The Wolves Who Wandered. Squill out.